the only essential difference between Jay-Z, the businessman who sold drugs as a young person in Brooklyn, and Jay-Z, the contemporary global brand as a business person, is that before, his business was illegal, and now his business is legal. That's it. The same qualities that allowed him to thrive as a drug dealer help him today as a legal business person. I don't know necessarily that at core, in terms of his core character and his core skills, he's changed so very much.
I don't really get where the hate comes in sometimes. If you don't like him as an artist, fine. But if you don't like him as a businessman, I think that's a problem. How are you gonna hate on this guy who's basically a self-made man? Jay didn't go to Yale, Jay didn't go to Harvard, Jay didn't go to boarding school, he didn't have those connections, he made himself. He took those steps, walked out of Marcy, and kept on walking.
People who are members, particularly of an oppressed people, I don't care what their religion background is, when a member of that group rise to some kind of stature and able to generate resources, they owe something back to their people.
If you're in Jay-Z's life and you're expecting to be there with him through thick and thin and kind of, you know, rock with Jay from the beginning to the end, I mean, I don't know. If you look at the history, you might be like, well, I don't know if I'm that important to his business for him to keep me around.
He used a lot of people, and once he had whatever he needed from them, he just, you know, separated himself. I'm Jazzo, also known as Johnny B, MC Jazz, The Jazz, most well known nowadays as The Originator.
Jazzo is an established MC. People have big respect for Jazzo, so if you're coming up, why not align yourself with somebody who's more familiar?
When I met Jay-Z, he was 15. Jay-Z's name was Shawnee D. I had gone off to college and I had just come back, and everybody was like, yo, you know, this cat, Shawnee D, he live in 534, yo, he the best in the projects. My man Nike was like, yo, he ain't better than Jazz. And they brought us together. They set it up like a battle, but, you know, we ended up just rhyming. And I rhymed first. After he heard me rhyme, he was like, nah, this ain't no battle. So he rhymed, and I was like, you know, kid got raw talent.
He was sick. He was sick. I thought Jazz was amazing. Just lyrically, line for line, I thought he was saying like amazing rhymes. And then you hear this other guy that says rhymes just as good as his, but he says them better. You're like, oh damn, what the hell's happening here? Eventually, I bought a drum machine, sort of educating him on song structure and the similarity to poetic writing and prose. When I'm rhyming, he's banging the beat, and vice versa. We started writing like little routines together. We became known as a little partner in the projects, and then more well-known throughout Brooklyn.
Jay has been smart enough to put himself in the right circles.
It was a big brother, little brother situation, but I never presented it that way. I looked at him as an equal, and I treated him as such.
Jazzo introduced me to Jay, like, super early in Jazz's career, like when Jazz first started making records.
From the gate, he always just had a real steady flow, kind of like what you heard when him and Jazz did the record Hawaiian Sophie together.
Look to my partner Jay, yeah, I saw it. Shrugged the shoulder, said, I can't call it.
Flow is something that I think we probably don't emphasize enough in hip-hop when we talk critically about the actual skill. At the end of the day, he's who he is because he can rap better than pretty much everybody.
By the time I was doing my first album, his name was Jay-Z. As far as him getting his name from me, you would have to ask him, but I mean, Jaz-O and Jay-Z, and his name is Shawn, you do the, you know.
When you have names that are similar to each other, it's just all about familiarity. If you think Jaz-O, you think Jay-Z.
I did incorporate him with everything. I took him out of the projects for the most part. You know, we were all over the country.
I can name like 30, 40 artists that came through our show, and one of them included was Jay-Z. You know, so he wasn't the Jay-Z that we know now, but he was cocky and rich in the mind, you know, as he would be now, back then, as a young dude. And that always struck me, you know, like his confidence was like exceeded his accomplishments at that point. It's almost like he knew his outline.
When he got the opportunity to rap with Jaz-O, he must have thought that he was going to be a star. And he saw that, you know, just how fragile all of that stuff was.
Making music was recreation for me, you know, like going to the park. It was something that I enjoyed. I became disenchanted with the music business. To be honest with you, I was never enchanted with the music business. He saw that I was disenchanted with the business aspect of, you know, the game. And I really didn't want any part of it. I guess he became disenchanted as well. He's like, man, my man, he ain't feeling it. Like, fuck it. You know, let me do something else.
The very first time I met Jay-Z, he was rocking this piece. I was just glowing. It looked silver. It's like this silver piece. It was just glowing. And I had never seen, I rocked silver at the time. A lot of cats in New York was rocking silver at the time. So I was just like, yo, was that silver, dog? And he just gave me kind of like this laugh, like, ah, you know, like looking at Clark like they don't know. And I'm like, is that silver, though? You know what I'm saying? But he wouldn't answer. But later on, I found out that he was rocking platinum, which if you think about it, man, it's like, I don't know this kid. Nobody knows this kid from Brooklyn, but he's rocking a platinum piece before anybody knows what platinum jewelry is. So apparently he had to be getting money from somewhere. He wasn't getting money from the record industry at the time. Nobody was fucking with him.
There's no way that there's a guy coming from the projects selling drugs, and he's changed his life around so much to where he's corporate gold. He's very genius-like.
I think Jay-Z had a thirst or a strong hunger to attain riches. We all did to an extent because of where we came from. Growing up in Marcy was tough, but that was a heavy heroin era. There were shootings, there was crime, there was drug abuse.
His good friend DeHaven Irby from childhood, lived down the hall from him, taught Jay-Z the ropes in terms of, you know, supply and demand, how the crack game worked. And as Jay-Z grew up, DeHaven moved to Trenton. Together they'd hustle the streets of Trenton. If you look at the economics of it, during the 1980s, the crack would come in through JFK, and the farther you went away from that entry point, down to Trenton, down the I-95 corridor to Maryland, Virginia, the more you could get for it because those markets weren't quite as saturated.
That's not something he's going to be able to shy away from when Blue Ivy gets older. It's like, Daddy, what did you do before rap? You know, he's going to have to address it because it's all over his records.
You learn some valuable things on the street. You learn how to survive. You also learn how to read people just by looking at their eyes, a flinch here or there. You learn how to pay attention to everything around you because not being aware of what's going on around you could be bad for your health.
One of the things that he told me was that people always think that young black kids who are drug dealers are monsters, and that these kids aren't monsters, that they're just looking for a way.
The black community tends to believe that if you are financially successful, then that justifies everything you've ever done. With all the economic suffering occurring in the black community, and this is true in a lot of third world countries as well, you find that people are willing to let you do pretty much anything if it's going to lead to financial success. So if you're selling drugs to little children and you get rich from it, people might say, well, that's not the best way to make money, but look how rich he is.
I can only imagine that it's an experience he's had within his lifestyle that has helped shape who he is as a person, as an MC, as a businessman.
Drug money was coming in, and you have your car, you have your apartment. For a dude from Marcy, that can be kind of it for a lot of people. Like, yo, I made it. I got my crib, I got my car, I got a girl, I'm good. But he kind of saw beyond that and saw that there was more out there, and he knew that, by being a drug dealer, being in the street, what he wouldn't get to where he wanted to be just doing that.
Even though he had to return to the streets, and it took him a little coaxing to, come out and do this again. I'm not sure how he and Dame Dash met each other, but it was a great experience for both of them.
We started to drift apart around that time. I was still making beats, so every time he heard through the grapevine, he would give me a call. It's just more like we went our separate ways, but it was always still there.
When I first tried to sign Jay, I was at Atlantic Records and East West Records, and they told me no. And when they told me no, I was mad. Because I was like, this guy is the fucking best.
At the time when he couldn't get signed, most particularly Def Jam, they were like, you're not LL Cool J.
And then one day I was just like, someone needs to manage you, you need to let Damon manage you. So I introduced them, and from that point of introduction, they became very, very cool. Because they had somewhat of the same spirit, the same hustle spirit. That was the beginning of what was about to become something crazy legendary.
We trying to take over the world, that's all.
Interesting that Dame from Harlem and Jay from Brooklyn came together.
Enough love, love is love, real recognized real.
At least me growing up, coming up in the 90s, they were two different types of guys. If you were from Harlem, you were one way. If you were from Brooklyn, you were another.
What I thought I saw with Damon was the fact that he was relentless for his artists.
Dame Dash was integral to the success of Jay-Z, right? Jay was always an observer. Jay, if you watch him, always sat back. He always put Dame in front of him.
Damon's cool, and Damon has done a lot for Jay-Z. Regardless what anybody says, I know everybody says he's an asshole, he's arrogant, he's obnoxious, and he is. But so what? And in some aspects, who isn't?
Damon knew from day one, man. No one saw him being the best hip-hop artist in history. No one saw him being the best businessman, to hit, Madison Avenue. I really think Dame knew and believed in Jay-Z, even more than Jay-Z believed in himself.
I remember specifically whenever LL Cool J was in town, Dame would scoop Jay up and be like, yo, Dame, LL is over here. So they would go to wherever LL is, and they would stalk him, and they would wait for LL by the parking lot or wherever exit LL had to take. Because LL was seen as like the champion battle rapper. And they battled several times. And Jay would light that ass up. Kind of like as validation, like, yo, we in this gladiatorial shit, I'm knocking out the champ. I remember on occasion, LL would be like, yeah, but I'm the one with the deal. And that would hurt. You know what I mean? That would hurt, because it was factual. Like, yeah, you might be nice on this street shit, this MMA shit, but I got the belt. You'll never be in the league.
Jay-Z, I believe, has an incredible sense of time. And I believe that translates from his music. One thing you gotta have is you gotta have a source of your strength. And for Jay-Z, that source is his music.
When Jay-Z was coming up as an artist, all the labels dissed him, nobody wanted him.
It just became an extremely frustrating thing, and then the next was just gonna do this on our own. Started Rockefeller Records, made all the records in my house. They could not get anyone to take a bite. None of the brilliant, creative A&Rs could see this young man's eminent talent. They couldn't do it, all right? So they said, we're going to launch this on our own. We're selective about how we're going to do this. Focused in that we have the audacity to believe that we can actually do this on our own. And that thread of being selective and focused is throughout his entire career.
The Rockefeller story, similar to the Def Jam story in Crush Groove, about them believing in themselves by any means necessary, about them not getting the deals they thought they deserved, was forced them to become independent.
To do something independently, you're gonna have to have some type of money to bankroll it. So Biggs came in as a silent partner. Biggs helped fund Rockefeller with certain illicit funds. Well, Biggs Burke was arrested for drug trafficking. Unfortunately, you could say he might not ever left that life. Jay-Z was a drug dealer too, so he put some money in. It was Biggs, Jay-Z, Dame Dash. So while Dame Dash was the executive, you know, doing moves on the label side of things, Jay-Z was the artist, and Biggs was just kind of there, the guy that everybody respected, but wasn't in front of the cameras. Just, you might have seen him in a picture here and there, but if you didn't know, you might have no idea who Biggs is.
Legend has it, and I actually believed it in the very beginning, was when we were making this album, Jay was like,
I'm only doing one, so we had to do it right.
Jay-Z talking about making one album, it was good marketing, because it made people go, oh, you know, get people's emotions attached to that whole concept. And so when he comes out with music, it's like, oh, we better get it, because this might be the last one.
I believe that he's calculated, so he thinks about what he's gonna do before he does it. He thinks about what he's gonna say before he says it.
You can't count the chess moves that Jay's got going, because most of them we don't see.
We were just trying to make a great album, have fun, make this money, and go ahead. The name of the album I'm speaking about would be his first one. It's called
Reasonable Doubt. You try begins, you know?
Dame locked a deal with a subsidiary of Priority Records, Moonroof Records. And the guy that ran Moonroof was this guy, Will Sokoloff.
When they came to me, they were looking for a distribution deal. They were not looking for a record deal because they wanted to pay to make their own videos and do certain things, and they wanted a bigger profit.
Around that time, Foxy Brown, 16 years old, was a rap phenomenon in New York. Because Foxy is Clark's cousin, Clark was like, you need to do a record with our artist, Jay-Z.
I produced Ain't No Nigga for him. The word was, you know, that I didn't really do anything. I just pressed 6 buttons, but, you know, I did what other producers that made attempts to sample the same song and formulate it in a certain way, and it didn't work. And afterwards, you know, he came to me.
That was the last record for that album. And I remember Damon playing that record over and over and over. And I just remember specifically being at a party and Funkmaster Flex put that record on. The women ran to the dance floor. I was like, oh, this record is out of here.
It became a runaway hit. We had to catch up to that.
When they sold 500,000 records, the label owed Rockefeller at least $1 million. Big was like, okay, where's our $1 million? And that's when the fuckery started.
Even though Jay-Z is street smart, Dame is street and smart.
Dame used to stress out and stress me out, like, yo, where's that check? Where's that check? I'm like, yo, it's coming. He's like, yo, you don't understand. Jay-Z's a street nigga. You don't understand, like, about checks take days or, like, 30 days deliverable or whatever. He's like, he wants his money now.
When Priority was going to do the royalties, they realized that Rockefeller was getting a percentage of my percentage. Instead of getting a check like their first check would have been like $250,000, whatever, the check would have been like $20,000, $10,000. Damon flipped out when he found out.
Jay let Dame do that kind of thing. He wasn't the rapper that was going to be running up in the office with the guns and all of that stuff. Jay let Dame be the bad guy.
They came to my office. I'm there working, they put it down, and they did this whole, like, gangster thing on me. And I told him, I said, this is like a mistake, man, you know, and he goes, I'm tired of being fucked over. I got this guy doing this. I said, okay, whatever. So I signed it, they left. The next day, I called my lawyer, I told him everything that happened. We ended up negotiating. I signed a different release, not that one, but I signed another one, and that was that, it was over.
Irv Gotti at the time was doing big things at Def Jam. And when he heard about how fucked up their deal was and how unhappy they were, he was like, well, now you have a record that we can bring to Def Jam. Where 2 years before, Russell and Leo told me to my face, he's not Def Jam material.
Nobody really tells it how it is. It was Irv Gotti's relationship with Leo Cohen that enhanced that deal with Def Jam.
I saw Jay in the street a couple of days later on 9th Avenue. And he kept on going like this to me, Will! He was like going like that. And he wasn't giving me a peace sign. It was $2 million. They'd gotten $2 million advance from Def Jam.
You do hear often that Jay-Z is the more corporate dude while Dame Dash is the more hood dude, and that's true. Jay-Z is more willing to clean up when necessary.
I was offered a deal on Rockefeller Records, and I didn't accept it. The problem was, through my experience in the music business, it was a very shitty deal. So I declined, and they made a big deal out of that, like I'm some type of bad guy, or I didn't want to be involved. Of course I wanted to be involved.
Jay-Z has an interesting pattern with mentors, which is that, you know, he'll identify someone who has a skill set, piece of knowledge that he wants to add to his own.
When everybody saw him, you know, on his rise as far as his popularity and celebrity, they would always say, yo, where's Jazz?
The case has been repeated throughout his career. He'll absorb all those qualities, become peers with his mentor, and then surpass them.
In order for him to be what he chose to become, that was one of the ingredients for that recipe, is to separate himself to an extent from me. And I don't think that it was a hateful type of thing, but I think that it was what it was. When they needed me, or they could use me for something, I got a call. Besides that, I couldn't get in touch with anybody.
All right, so Jay-Z's positioning in the industry today. He continues to break new ground. And the one word that I think has been consistent with Jay-Z throughout his career that has represented power is he's selective. Very selective.
I think what I see in Jay-Z is more of being an opportunist. It wasn't just about me that sort of disappointed me. It was the fact that he had separated himself from a lot of the cats who helped him get to where he is today.
When he was a kid, his father used to take him to the gambling spots in Brooklyn. And Jay was telling me the lessons that his father taught him about gambling applied to what he did in life. Sometimes you get that feeling and, you know, you just have to play it. Sometimes you get another feeling and you have to double up. And sometimes you get another feeling and you got to step away from the table.
I think that Jay grows out of certain situations. And again, it goes back to him putting himself in the right circle and making decisions that he feels like will benefit his business.
You have to have the soul of a poet and the mind of a killer. That's what a lot of successful people have in common. At the time, if you were an artist and you wanted to get some extra money, you would try to get an endorsement deal. And even before that, you know, Run DMC were rapping about Adidas and they didn't expect any money from it. The money came after, right? After they had done the work. So hip-hop had wisened up by then and, you know, you actually go to the company first before you start, you know, rapping about them. So Dame and Jay went to take a meeting with the owners of Iceberg jeans, and Iceberg was a popular brand at the time, but they were not interested. Dame and Jay left that meeting and essentially said, fuck this. You're not gonna give me an endorsement deal? I will make my own jeans. And that's how Rocawear began. In the years leading up to the sale of Rocawear to Iconics, Rocawear was reporting its annual sales somewhere between $300 and $400 million.
Anybody who listens to his music, which I have, I listen to it all the time because I think it's really good, they hear him constantly rap about money and how much he loves money and how money matters over everything else.
So every guy wants to be Jay-Z. They want to have, you know, just the life that he lives. They want to smoke cigars and drink on a yacht in Portofino, Italy.
I believe that there are other values than money and the accumulation of money. I'm an old hippie, okay? So I've always felt that way. And one of the things that I've always deplored in rap music is that strain of it that is ultra materialistic. Those artists for whom there's nothing greater than the accumulation of wealth and status. That's a very, very old dream. You know, you can say it's an old American dream. You can say it motivated John D. fucking Rockefeller, okay? And fine, he made himself a wealthy man. You know, all these years later, is John D. Rockefeller a great hero of mine because he accumulated a lot of wealth? No.
I think people put certain morality on artists that those artists don't have themselves.
Back then, you know, we were all kind of singing it and talk money, cash, hoes, and it's all good. You know, I don't think that his intention was to just, oh, I'm just gonna go out here and degrade women. I don't think that was his intention at all. I think it was a part of the lifestyle that we were all living.
I don't think that anybody ever expects Jay-Z to be a conscious rapper.
There were things that he said that wasn't, you know, right. And when you think about it nowadays, at least when I think about it as an adult and who I am in my lifestyle, I'm like, that's not cool because I have daughters and I don't want them reciting that.
If you want to put a dollar figure on Jay-Z's impact on the black community negatively, let's say he could take at least a couple $2 billion worth of responsibility. I think that Jay-Z's relationship with Beyonce, it's an interesting chapter in his life.
People magazine didn't care about Jay-Z. Us Weekly didn't care about Jay-Z. It's when they got together and became a power couple.
All throughout history, powerful people have formed marriages for power, for money, for wealth.
They both seem to become exponentially greater artists when they were separately.
Jay-Z went from being the least likely to succeed to being the guy that married Beyonce, the prom queen.
Something like Jay's drug dealer past doesn't really help her. Her image is too clean for that.
When I first met him, I didn't know why Beyonce liked him, because I was that older person who looked at him as a rapper or, you know, even worse, just a rapper. I was invited to a birthday dinner for Steve, and Jay was one of the guests, and he walked into the room and said, "Good evening, everyone." And I instantly got it. There was just a presence and a demeanor that just was not rapper. It was gentleman.
A lot of people don't know it was a chain of events that led up to the demise of Rockefeller.
So I remember we were putting Rockefeller on the cover of The Source in 2002. I don't think the Jay and Beyonce relationship was out there, but those pictures may have surfaced and they were together on vacation. And back home, you know, you had the announcement that Cameron was going to be the VP at Rockefeller.
Coming into the Rockefeller situation, I tried to, not make it over, but just be friendly with everybody. And the love wasn't necessarily given back. I don't know if Jay wanted me to be the president or not, or whatever the case may be. People wasn't feeling that. But regardless of who was feeling it or not, that's what Dame Maxine offered me.
When I think about it, I'm like, wait, did he ever serve as VP in that role, or did they just make that big announcement and then that's when all hell broke loose?
As Rockefeller grew and as, you know, it partnered with Def Jam and Jay-Z's career started to explode, Jay-Z started to realize that, you know, he could probably do a lot of this himself.
If you're gonna be a businessman, you gotta be prudent with your money. You gotta see where all the money is going. If Jay-Z is looking at Dame Dash, popping all these tags.
You got G4. We're going to G4.
Acting like the money's not gonna stop flowing.
That's hot. Can I get one of these? Yeah, you buy a $34 million jet, they give you a couple. Oh, they give you?
He might start to feel the waves and be like, all right, man, you gotta dial back.
Money wasn't no object. Rockefeller was, you know, grossing like $400 million a year, private jets everywhere. I don't think we ever flew commercial. We'd take a jet from New York to London, from London to Paris, from Paris to Amsterdam. We did it big.
On the one hand, you have, Dame Dash and Rockefeller trying to build a label. You've got to make other artists successful as well. Before anyone suspected Kanye to be what Kanye is going to be today, Damon and Biggs were like, listen to this. This is where hip-hop is going. It appears that Jay wasn't always on board with that. I think a lot of people believe that was a turning point in Rockefeller.
And there was a lot of shit going on. A lot of it. Where Dame spazzed out on people or fired them and Jay take them in. No disrespect to their gender or nothing, but it was like mommy and daddy. You know what I'm saying? So mommy was crazy and, daddy was a little more level-headed. When I got to Rockefeller, Jay wasn't in the office. Jay ain't come to the office for the whole 4 years. But what I know now is someone in Dipset had a problem with someone in the Rockefeller office and was blacking out in the office and spazzed out.
The major reason for the breakup was his friends going apart.
Then it began with Dipset making songs going at Jay. That's when it went all wrong. Now your peoples is making diss songs at me, and you in the video. They talking about 2 more for Cam for taking over the rock. And y'all, you co-signing this? All right, cool.
I don't understand that. Y'all don't, Jay's not on Def Jam. Jay's on Rockefeller.
Jay had to call the marketing meeting for the Black Album, and nobody from the Rockefeller staff was invited.
How y'all got a meeting about Jay without me? How y'all make any decisions about Jay without me?
He's supposed to okay this meeting because it's his label. But it's Jay-Z, it's Dame Dash. I'm a CEO too, nigga. I ain't got to tell you nothing. I'm handling my business. This is Jay-Z's business.
Huh, John?
Damon, how you gonna have a problem with me?
Because I'm asking you because you here on Jay's behalf.
John Manilli, he's sitting right there. That's Jay-Z's manager. Dame fired him. Jay said, come over here.
I bet you Jay don't know I wasn't invited. I bet you that. An email, now we discuss things through email. Y'all giggling and shit with my artist. He's not a Def Jam artist. He's a Rockefeller artist.
When you're coming up, you need that guy to be like, good cop, bad cop. You need that guy barking on cats like, yo, nah, this is what we need. But after a while, that might not get you any further. So are you gonna adjust or are you gonna move on?
Jay's ultimate decision to sort of leave Rockefeller, it feels like it was more about business than it was about anything else. But it really comes down to weighing, loyalty and business.
And y'all not nobody in this room better than anybody in my staff. So how y'all having a meeting or make any decisions about Jay without my authority? That's what I don't understand.
And it was clear. To me, it was, looking through the lens, Dame might have been a little fuzzy.
All of these people, who are all these people? How y'all talking about my artist career without me?
Dame's pushiness became a liability.
What the fuck you laughing at?
So he had to leave Dame.
Who called the meeting about Jay with all these nice people without me?
John came to me this week.
All right then, how do y'all call a meeting about Jay-Z without Rockefeller? There ain't even nobody from Rockefeller in here.
You could call it detachment or you could call it ruthlessness, right? He's able to off with their heads when he needs to off with their heads. He went with people who saw corporate America as partners rather than enemies. So he, did more business with, John Manilli and Steve Stout.
When Jay-Z makes a decision to enter into a business, is he already thinking about how that sets up the next move? Or does he anticipate there may be some resistance that may create the need to make a different move? Right? I think he does. I believe that he's playing chess and many others are playing checkers.
In order to have the door open to you to create that type of financial gain for yourself, you got to talk to some people. And those people, whether they call the Illuminati or whatever the case may be, those dealings are absolutely imminent.
He's best friends with Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin. What rapper do you know is like BFFs, got Gwyneth Paltrow in the club saying nigga and all that stuff.
There's been all this talk about Illuminati and all of that, whatever. Like, you know, half of the hip-hop community doesn't probably understand what that is.
I know for a fact that when President Obama was elected, there was a concerted effort amongst the black elite to control the thinking of African-American people. I know this because I was in some of those conversations.
Being affiliated with the president, you know, to have Obama dusting his shoulder off. To the public, we look at it like, oh, Oprah and Jay, like that's her boy, or, you know, that's, again, putting himself in a different light than other rappers. Other rappers don't have that.
Does the Illuminati exist? Is there a grand conspiracy to control celebrities like Jay-Z? I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence of that. But would it surprise me that the people are being manipulated? No, it wouldn't.
Jay-Z's retirement was a very calculated and clever move. He wanted to kind of put a cap on the whole Rockefeller Def Jam era, the era of Jay-Z the Hustler. He wanted to be not the guy on the record label, but the guy who owned the record label.
Jay-Z's retirement concert, that was a great moment.
He did the first half of the concert in, you know, his usual attire, and then he came out in the second set in a suit. It was very symbolic. Retiring from hip-hop, from actually making records, and, you know, going to become the president, CEO of Def Jam, moving in from street corner to corner office. It's almost like he went into this business cocoon. He went in as a rapper and emerged as a businessman butterfly.
Even then, Dame trying to steal his spotlight. Jay gave a check to Afeni Shakur and Miss Wallace, and here come Dame popping out from behind and come on the stage, hold the check from up in. Jay like, nigga, would you get the fuck out of here? He got hit with the left blow. He's like, yo, my man retiring.
I felt the breakup of Rockefeller was imminent. They were ants. You know, and ants, you know, all have the same agenda. You know, they follow the same code. And if you're not in the colony, you die.
Jay-Z becoming president of Def Jam was definitely a chess move on his part. He was an artist for so long. It was kind of like, okay, let me become an executive, a boss of this company, and see what it's really like.
It wasn't just Def Jam that was interested in having him as an executive. Warner was also going to offer him a pretty high-ranking position. For Jay-Z, the allure was much greater for Def Jam because they gave him the opportunity to get his masters back.
A label has the ability to repackage and sell masters to generation after generation after generation of cats.
I think that any artist who manages to regain ownership of his master recordings has done something remarkable. Artists come and go. The recordings are more or less eternal, and they can be exploited indefinitely.
So for someone like Jay to be in a position where he owns most of his masters of his catalog, I mean, that's an asset that is very rare.
So shortly after Jay-Z accepted the deal to become head of Def Jam, he took Damon Dash out for dinner, and he said, I'm going to take this offer. You and Biggs can have full control of Rockefeller Records. I want full control of my masters for Reasonable Doubt. And he says that Damon Dash turned him down. What Jay-Z ultimately did was kind of an end around on Damon Dash. He said, well, how about you make me CEO of Def Jam? Rockefeller would be under that, kind of leapfrogging Damon Dash in the corporate totem pole. Damon Dash, of course, did not respond well to this. Initially, they gave him his own imprint, Damon Dash Music Group, but that fizzled out after a few months. The next time they saw each other was in an elevator at the Def Jam offices. Jay-Z was in a suit, and, you know, and Damon Dash was wearing jeans and sneakers, and you just kind of thought, you know, man, this is a different dude than the dude I started out with.
I interviewed Dame Dash and Kareem Biggs-Burke in 2007. Can you elaborate more on what happened, or?
That was my brother. To me, it was like a betrayal. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm sure he felt he was right. You know, the way he puts it, this is business. So that's the way he felt our relationship was. That's what it is. He made a request to the powers that be that when we sell the brand, that he maintained control of it and that we weren't part of it, you know, and that's what he asked for, and that's what he got.
It was a time where Dame Dash was really going like the downward spiral. There was so much news about him, like foreclosures and financial turmoil.
When somebody sells a house in the newspaper, it's like a good thing, but when I sell a house, it's a bad thing. When I sell a company, it's a bad thing. When anybody else sells a company, it's a good thing. So I've never understood that. I'm not happy with my financial situation because I don't have $1 billion, and I want that. Until I get it, then yeah, I say that, yeah, I mean, I'm not financially where I want to be.
This was a time when Jay-Z was really shining. It was the year before he and Beyonce got married.
I'm a fan of Jay-Z when he was Jay-Z, when he represented what we represented. But since then, I don't really listen to too much what he says, unless I hear he's talking about me. He's like a different guy, so we don't know. You know what I mean? He's not what we thought he was.
So if you think that the Rockefeller was like a mafia organization, do you think that he would have been whacked by now for his disloyalty to his brothers?
I think you just said it. I mean, there are some mob terms that we sometimes refer to as we relate to him, but, you know, we weren't happy with what it was. It was a little embarrassing, you know what I mean, talking what we represented, but yeah, it is what it is, you know. And like this, if this was a mob, I don't think we would have been able to get to him. He probably would have been protected by somebody, you know what I mean?
Still, to this day, Jay-Z is who he is, and Dame Dash is still being slandered in the news. Like, there was something out, I want to say yesterday, where he owes $162,000 in back rent, and the landlord said that they trashed the place. He had weed paraphernalia, drug paraphernalia, like just living in squalor, where Jay-Z is now just, nobody's touching him right now.
I don't know any of the inner workings of their situation outside of their partnership. I mean, from the outside, yeah, it looked like some real crab shit.
You can argue, yeah, he was with Jazzo early, then they split. Him and Dame split. You know what I mean? There are a lot of situations that he's been in, or relationships he's been in with people on a business level that he's grown out of. We don't know Shawn Carter and who that person is. We only know Jay-Z. We only know who we've seen and watched in videos and heard on records, but we don't know, you know, about what could be his real circle.
Jay-Z comes from a place where it's like, fuck the government, fuck this, fuck that. That's what the whole idea with hip-hop was. But now it's like, okay, now I'm working with these people. You know, I'm working for the man, and the man is working for me, and we're both making each other rich.
Jay-Z does have more loyalty to his corporate partners. I don't think he cares if they're white. I think he cares if their money is green.
Everybody's rocking Tom Ford because he has a song, a Magna Carta Holy Grail called Tom Ford. So Tom Ford is like, thanks, buddy.
I believe Jay has a lot of influence on people. Jay was the guy who was like, take off your jersey and wear a button-up, and dudes were walking around the hood with button-ups on, and I was just like, really?
If we're gonna be the ones idolizing him, then we need to look at ourselves and say, why are we idolizing someone who we know comes out here and promotes, you know, commercialism?
When Rockefeller sold itself back to Universal, they sold their 50% of the company for $20 million. A few years later, when Rockaware sold the Iconics, over $200 million.
For Jay, who really made the majority of his money through the Rockaware sale, he knew that by selling that company that time would create a variety of other opportunities for him. Money brings a lot of opportunity, and you can't underestimate the power of money. And I also think that for Jay, the selling of that deal signified to corporate America and to the business world that he was for real. There's Coca-Cola, there's McDonald's, there's IBM, there's Apple, there's Jay-Z.
Once you realize that people believe you or believe your movement, you basically, I hope this doesn't come off crazy, but you can basically sell them anything.
The Barclays deal was one of the most horrible deals ever done, especially in sports. They played Jay-Z like a fiddle. They played the community like a fiddle.
At the end of the day, when the stuffy businessmen were like, how can we gain momentum in terms of gaining public support behind this? Who's the person that are we going to reach out to? Robert De Niro? Are we going to reach? No, we got to get Jay-Z.
They put him on a big billboard in Times Square, as an owner of the team. And a lot of people really thought that he was actually the owner of the team.
They would not have been able to sail through, those that own the majority part of the Nets, all of the issues that had to do with zoning and rezoning, etc., without having someone like a Jay-Z involved.
I think it's a case of Jay-Z pimping corporate America as much as corporate America is pimping Jay-Z.
Politics is a messy business, and local politics might be messier than national politics. So for Jay to have discovered this in the course of pursuing this professional basketball team for Brooklyn, what did he expect?
I am one of the people who was affected by Barclays. We didn't even know that it was going to be related to Jay-Z or called Barclays or anything. We just were told that we would need to move. That we knew that eventually if we refused, which we of course did, that they would buy the building right from up under us, which is really ultimately what happened.
At the time, there was serious confrontations. I think they raised the question of eminent domain.
And I can tell you the grumbles and groans of the community that knew that Brooklyn would not be the same and that this would usher in a gentrification.
These buildings were deemed blighted. They weren't big enough to generate enough tax revenue. Some of the other blight indications were cracks in the sidewalk. Like, this is blight right here, under their definition. Of course, you can find cracks in the sidewalk in every neighborhood.
Once they got the arena built, they paid Jay-Z some money. I think he made $6 or $7 million. And the city of Brooklyn was royally screwed.
The developers had to secure some of the properties, but I was able to live with it because they gave the owners beyond market value. This is Brooklyn, man. This is downtown Brooklyn. That's what downtowns mean. It means big buildings. It means hustle and bustle. And it means that's what it is.
I truly think that he has a lot of love for Brooklyn. But I gotta be honest, I feel a lot of it's about the money. You listen to his lyrics, and that comes up a lot.
Every time someone moves into a community, they get upset. But who's upset? I mean, when you see a dude's stash spot being bird's eye view of the arena that he helped bring to Brooklyn, I mean, come on, man. You can't write a better story than that.
It's not a money play. It's a branding play. I'm sure there's a long-term plan. And what Jay wants to do, he's obviously involved in sports at Rock Nation. And what that long-term play is, I think everybody's waiting to see.
To move into sports management, nobody saw that coming. You know, but it's those kind of moves, those unexpected things that are going to help grow everything for us as an industry, and opens other doors for everybody else to come through. And hopefully somebody will surpass him. But there'll probably never be another Jay.
Still, brilliant move from a marketing and branding perspective. He then learns from that experience and translates that into what he's doing now by representing NBA, NFL athletes, all right? Knowing when to make your move, incredibly important, and he has a gift at it.
Leverage is an important thing to have, and I think if anyone we can learn from in hip-hop ever, it's definitely Jay.
I mean, I don't necessarily know the effect of this recent deal with his current album being released through Samsung, but you can best believe that Samsung had never experienced so much public notoriety than they have, you know, in connection with this last record. You know, Samsung for like several weeks was a household word. I don't fuck with Samsung, but I was like, oh, Samsung, okay.
Did you listen to the radio on July 4th all day? It was just Jay-Z on the radio, July 4th. I don't care what city you was in, everybody was just playing Jay-Z album.
Prior to this new Jay-Z record coming out, I don't think I ever thought about Samsung ever. You know, it was like, for real, I didn't even know they still made it. You know, you go into a store, you may actually notice their brand now because they aligned themselves with somebody who could shine some light on them. You know, they were in the dark for a long time.
With the Samsung deal, he guaranteed himself the best opening week sales of his entire career. Magna Carta Holy Grail was certified platinum the instant it came out. That's never happened with any other album of his.
Jay-Z put you in a position where, what else you gonna do? Where else you gonna go and what else are you gonna do? I'm the only thing moving for the moment. Rock with me or you're gonna be out the loop.
What Jay's accomplished to date is absolutely remarkable. And I wanna believe that he's mostly fairly satisfied with what he's accomplished. I don't believe it's going to tamp down his ambition to do more, but to my way of thinking, he hasn't devoted so very much energy yet to charitable and philanthropic pursuits.
I think Jay-Z definitely has a responsibility to give back just because he's such an influential person. I think a lot of people want a hero or want somebody to be that hero, but ultimately it's up to that person to decide whether they want to do it or not.
I do believe that the conversation that began with Harry Belafonte leveling a criticism against Jay-Z about his lack of community service has some merit.
Harry is also wise enough to have seen a better version of Black America, a better version of America, period, where everything wasn't corporatized, everything wasn't about the dollar bill.
I think maybe he would have liked to engage with Mr. Carter or Jay-Z in a way, but I think the way that it was delivered, it polarized our community into rappers that say shit and rappers that don't say shit. And the idea wasn't even about rappers that say shit or don't say shit, it's about rappers that do shit.
I think that what Harry did was great, and I noticed Jay-Z listened.
Since then, I saw even Beyonce, who had even no need to come out and say anything. She laid out the things that she's doing. Now, Jay-Z, I think, took a different approach, and recently in his album Magna Carta, then delivered what he believed was his response to it.
For him to use the word boy when referring to an 80-plus-year-old man, I think Jay-Z's response was incredibly immature and really borderline pathetic and incredibly disrespectful. When Harry Belafonte dies, people will remember him as an iconic figure that had an impact on the world that far transcended what he could do as a singer and as a dancer. Jay-Z will just be remembered as a nigger in Paris.
Great thing about Jay-Z, for me, just as a student of history and a student of America, is that hip-hop really was the first Black art form to take equity back for itself and to claim its rightful spot in the mainstream.
I was in the Caribbean vacationing with my wife. I remember walking into an elevator, and there was an older white couple in the elevator. As the elevator is going up, the woman is humming It's a Hard Knock Life. And I was like, this record is out of here. If this white woman in the Caribbean is singing that record, then it's a pop record.
Nobody gave hip-hop a shot on pop radio. Hip-hop took over pop radio, right? It wasn't going to be segregated on some black station either. It was just going to be pop itself. And Jay-Z is important because he's the largest, greatest proponent of that thought form, right? I'm not crossing over. Come to me.
So is Jay-Z a genius of time?
I think Jay-Z can be defined as a ruthless genius. I think that's pretty accurate.
I don't think I'm on either side. Like, is he a genius? I don't know if I would call that genius. He's very smart. He's very smart. Ruthless, that's a little extreme for me.
He's a human being like the rest of us, but he certainly wouldn't have become the man that he is today if he weren't a brilliant man.
I think what's interesting about Jay-Z's career is that, you know, the first time he's on record is in 1990 with the Originators. That's the name of the song, a track that he did with Jazz, the Jazz that was on EMI. So you're talking about 23 years later, and not only is he still relevant, but he's still killing people with his rhymes. Like, on a lyrical level, people will still look at him like, yo, he's nasty, right? 23 years later, that's unprecedented.
I don't think Jay-Z is a creative genius. I think that he is a lyrical genius, but to say creative, that's too comprehensive for what he does.
Jay-Z is a brilliant, not only is a brilliant artist, he's a brilliant businessman. And I think that he is a student of the game. And part of being a student of the game is that you really study the game. You know what I mean? Just the same way that Kobe is a student of the game and studies, you know, to be the best ball player. Like, I think he really studies the game and understands the history of it. You know what I mean? but also is looking for ways to, you know, excel it moving forward.
But then that also comes from, I think, growing up in the killing zone of New York, where the competition is just murderous, literally and figuratively. I mean, you've got so many brilliant people you're competing against. You got people that want to fight you, want to kill you, want to sue you. And so it can make you paranoid. So you identify people as either your friend or your enemy, and enemies stay out.
Everything he talks about is about strength and winning. But now he's a father. And with your kids, yes, you want to show them that you're strong, but you also show your kids sometimes that you're vulnerable. I believe we're going to hear and see some of that. The more human, the more relatable, the more, even more accessible Shawn Carter. This next evolution to me might be the most interesting.